Welcome back to the Healthy Commute. I'm Dr. Dan with Dr. Pascal. So today we're going to talk about an interesting topic that we've had questions from patients coming up in the last few weeks, talking about exercise and aging. The role of exercise as we age, the type of exercise as we age, should we exercise as we age, all these different topics. And I think we want to kind of get to the bottom of it, really, and the goal is always to have our patients live, the best, most healthiest life they possibly can. And I think exercise plays a key role in that.
Absolutely. And I mean, we can define aging, Dr. Dan. I mean, I'm going to be turning 40 next year, and already myself, I'm starting to see a shift in how I personally want to exercise, right? And so, I see this in terms of questions that I get from patients, but I'm sort of feeling this myself too, that I want to change the intensity, and I want to change the way that I do things in the gym, because as we age, a little bit of our focus and our priorities shift. So I think maybe that would be like the first thing that we can discuss with exercise and aging is define the goals, right? And so when we're talking about exercise and aging, let's not necessarily talk about the high-end athlete. We're not talking about the person that's doing Ironman triathlons, because that's a whole different category. We're talking about, in majority, the average person going to work, having a family, the person that's the average Canadian, average Manitoban, if you will. What are the exercise needs, and what should that person be doing to optimize their health, right?
Right. Now, one of the questions that came up a few times this week was a few patients in their mid-40s admitted that their bodies are broken down because of the intensity of the exercise that they did when they were teenagers and in their 20s, and how that's affecting them right now. But at the core of it is their main goal is they want to move, right? They're seeing as they're getting older, the lack of mobility and the difficulty. Simple things could be done every day, like walking, picking something up, keeping up with your kids. And then on the other side of it, we've had patients in their 60s being completely inactive for too long, and now realizing that they need to do something now. So really, both ends are talking about exercise, and basically what they want to know is aging gracefully. Right. We know that we can't anti-age,
right?
But we just need to understand what we need to do to age gracefully.
Absolutely.
And like you talked about the goal, and I think for me, as I get older, like some of the things that I want to make sure that I could keep doing are things like move, like walk, travel, pick up something, lift my own luggage overhead, pick up my grandkids one day. But all those things need my body to move properly. If I can't do that, I can't walk, I can't travel, I can't pick up my grandkids. And that is something that I really want to make sure I could do properly.
And if you want to do those things at 84, is the time to start planning for that at 83?
Yeah.
No, it's now, right?
Yeah.
And the sooner we can plan for that, the better. And Tim Ferriss always asks people on his podcast, it's phenomenal. He always asks some of these very wise people, what would you tell your 20-year-old self, your 30-year-old self?
Yeah.
Or he asks his athletes, like, what would you do different? And oftentimes they talk about training, especially even in their 30s, less intensity, decreasing that intensity, a bit more recovery time. And so I think we want to really hit on that today is shifting the focus of how we exercise and then how we exercise.
So first of all, let's first talk about exercise, let's say as a whole. We talked about the type of exercise that's best. So could we technically be doing the same type of exercise we did when we were in our teens or 20s and still be doing that same type of exercise in our 50s, 60s, and 70s?
Absolutely. So functional movements, right? Like the type of movements that our brain, our body, our spine, our posture, for our function, we need certain types of exercise. Squatting, which is the equivalent of sitting down, like lunging, right? The equivalent of kneeling down to pick up things. Deadlifting, picking things up off the floor. Pressing things over our head. And general full body movement. So our body likes to do functional movements. Mm-hmm. So, for someone that's in their 20s, they might be trying to deadlift 300 pounds. Where when someone's hitting their 60s and 70s, maybe that's simply, proper motion down to the ground and picking up, a 10-pound package, or picking up a 10-pound ball or a 10-pound weight. But it's still, in essence, a functional deadlift, picking something up from the ground. It's just the goal of the exercise has changed from maxing out the lift in your 20s to get as strong as you can to, being able to properly do this safely, picking up a baby off the floor or a grandkid.
So let's first maybe clarify functional movement compared to, let's say, going to the gym and doing a bicep curl.
Right.
So what's the difference between, just doing a bicep curl compared to a functional movement?
Well, a bicep curl might target, one muscle or the group of muscles that cause your bicep or your arm to curl in. Okay, so they might strengthen this muscle, they might tone that muscle, but it's not very functional because there are very few things that we do in life that would cause us to just basically curl our arm up, unless we're talking about summertime, the 8-ounce curls, right, drinking a beer. Yes, that might help you in that respect, but it's not functional in that there are very few things in life where you would have your arm in a fixed position, bringing your hand from mid-waist basically up to your mouth, right? That doesn't really help us to keep us doing things long term. So functional means it applies to everyday movements in life, such as picking things up, putting things overhead, full body movements that allow you to quote unquote function.
Right. So as we age, how does functional movement or functional exercise, how could that change, based on 1920 to 50s and 60s?
Well, I think the main ways in which it changes is the intensity with which you push yourself. Like when you're in those younger years, 19, 20, 21, early 20s, part of it, I think, too, is we want to push those people as hard as we can because you're learning lessons about what your body can do. What are the physical limits of the body? You're trying to push your body to sort of achieve your max fitness, late 20s, early 30s, and then after that, the goal is to maintain it with functional fitness as long as we can.
Right.
So there might be a building phase, if you want to look at it, a challenging phase where the stress is really good in those earlier years. We want to stress the body at that time to make it grow and become stronger and so on and so forth. But then we reach a certain point in life where we're not really in that growth phase as much anymore. Now what we want to do is maintain that as long as we possibly can, because the longer we maintain it, the better health that we have later on in life.
Right.
And so we can't train that hard as we get older because it takes us longer and longer to recover.
I think the key thing is the recovery point. And
correct.
That we need to properly understand recovery, right?
Yeah.
So let's say me in my 20s compared to me in my 30s and 40s, the key difference is my role in life, right? In my 20s, I only had me to worry about.
Yeah.
Right? And in my 30s, 40s, and 50s, now, now it's not just about me, but now it's me being able to take care of my family, going to work, provide for them, and kind of be there for them.
And
so,
also all of your patients, right?
Right.
You have to do your job properly.
Right. So if I need a day or two to recover,
or a week
or
to
a week,
recover.
Now, and let's say if I still need to do all those things that I need to do, and I don't give my body that chance to recover properly, then I could start to accrue, injuries or joints that now won't function or move properly.
Or energy deficiency.
So now I'm not healing properly. I don't have the same kind of endurance for my patients, my family, sleep, all these things. So now I'm deficient, and now I'm going to start to break down the other way. That's what I don't want to get into.
Right. So I think the key thing is someone's saying, well, doc, how do I know what that means? Well, when you're going to the gym, in your late teens and 20s, you can truly push yourself to utter exhaustion where you're laying on the floor for 10 minutes afterwards because you can't move because you pushed so hard. Because you could probably get up the very next day and do it again. And you could get up the next day and do it again. And then when you're into your 30s and 40s, that type of stress really augments your cortisol levels, it weakens your immune system and make you more susceptible to getting sick, make you fatigued and cause, like you said, other injuries and problems. So, we train at maybe 70, 80%. So when you go to the gym, you have a good workout, but you're always leaving some in the tank for tomorrow. You're always leaving feeling better than when you got there, right? You shouldn't be dragging out of the gym exhausted because you've beat yourself down, because we're no further ahead, right? And so you should be leaving the gym feeling invigorated and being excited to get back tomorrow. Because as we age also, consistency is key. In other words, it's way more important to do moderate exercise every single day with, intensity that's age appropriate. Because intensity is good, but age appropriate intensity, and being able to show up and do it again tomorrow versus training once a week as hard as we can and needing a full week to recover.
Right. And now, just to clarify too, intensity is still very important as we age.
Correct.
It's not about, okay, well now I just need to walk around the block once and that's the intensity. We still need to push our bodies, but like you said, it doesn't have to be to 110%, right? Because
Correct.
we still need to wake up the next day. And like you mentioned, we still need to move every day.
Correct.
So that's the key part about exercise is we need to move all the joints in our bodies, ideally every single day, for it to stop the breakdown. Because our body is so efficient that it'll say, if you're not using this, I'm gonna just shut it down.
Right.
Right? And then that's when we could become very stiff. We could become very immobile. A joint loses its range of motion, and that's where I think injuries come into play, because now we have, let's say, a body that's stuck, especially if we're working at a desk all day. Our shoulders are rounded forward, our backs are everything's forward, and now we're going to the gym, and now we're asking it to do things that we haven't done, for a week.
Full range of motion.
And now all of a sudden now we have shoulder issues, rotator cuff issues, hamstring issues, disc issues.
Low back
all
issues,
these things start to come up. So it's very key to make sure that we can maintain our flexibility, our stability, our strength, and then speed during an exercise. But we need that full range of motion.
Yes.
Throughout that
And so that's actually one of the points that I wanted to discuss and bring up is range of motion. And there's the Happy Body, right? Is it Jersey Gregorick, and he talks about it, like ad nauseum in his book. And he trains people, and he won't even let them add, I think, like even 10 pounds until they can do the movement properly in full range of motion without pain. It's the only time that you can start adding load, right? And so we want to add load, we want to add resistance, because resistance helps us bring, proper muscle mass and strength. But we need resistance training, but we also need range of motion, right? So someone says, great, well then all I'll do is yoga. Well, yoga's great, it's gonna help us with range of motion, but it doesn't give us the resistance piece, right? It doesn't give us the strength and the muscle mass building that we need. Well, bodybuilding is great, but then again, like you said, if someone's sitting at a computer all day, they go to the gym and do 2 hours of bodybuilding, and they're doing no mobility, we're gonna get range of motion issues, and then problems later on, right? Cardio, fantastic, right? We wanna get circulation, we wanna get moving. But if all you're doing is running, right, same thing. You're just gonna get some overuse injuries, you're not building strength, you're not doing mobility. So we really need a cross blend of all of those things. You wanna move as much as you can all the time. You wanna work on that flexibility, mobility, right? You don't have to be able to fold in half and get your head past your toes, but to have decent mobility in all ranges of motion, right? You wanna have some strength. You don't need to be, 55 years old and be shredded and have, 220 pounds of muscle mass, but to have a reasonable amount of strength for your body type at your age, right?
Right.
So we want to get a little bit of exercise in each one of those areas. Like you said, flexibility and speed, yes. Doing some speed training, a little bit of speed training. We're not sprinting, trying to keep up to Usain Bolt, but being able to run 200 yards at a decent pace for your age and your ability. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think a key thing, I'm just, as you're talking, imagining, what basically is a sign of aging, right? For me, it's not necessarily a number, but it's, let's say, seeing someone that is stuck, immobile, and no range of motion. And they could be 40, 50, or 60. To me, they look older. And, I have patients in their 80s with full range of motion, strength, speed, and they look younger based on their flexibility, their range of motion. So that's why we work so hard on posture with our patients, because we understand that proper posture will allow you to have full range of motion and keep things well, in a good position.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's why, especially our job, as we see it, with our patients, as in terms of exercise as aging, is if we could keep their body, their spine, their joints moving properly, then they could be able to do the things that they want to do. They could lift, they could pick up their grandkids, they could do all that and minimize their injuries. So range of motion, posture is so important as we age.
Absolutely, and with the world we live in, with sitting more and more, like you know as well as I do, that range of motion is going in at a quicker age now.
Right.
I mean, seeing 17-year-olds come in and I do like a hamstring test on them, and their leg can't go up to 45 degrees because they sit so much. They're losing that range of motion in their teens already, and so yeah, it's so important to keep that up.
So anything else that we should talk about before we close in terms of maybe a recap? What should we make sure that people could walk away with?
So maybe this is all overwhelming for you, right? I mean, you could YouTube some of the things we talked about. You could YouTube like range of motion exercises or functional range of motion exercises. You could Google, some resistance training for basic squats, deadlifts, and presses, and get some functional exercises that you could do at home. Yeah. But maybe you don't want to do that stuff and you want some guidance. come on in, sit down, do an exam with us. We could go through some basic movements with you and see how are you moving. Are you able to do a proper squat? Can you do a proper lunge? And see, do you have some range of motion limitations? And then we can work in the office and help you with those, give you some corrective exercises. If someone thinks they're doing a good job and they're in good shape but they want the next level, I would suggest go to somewhere like a CrossFit gym where they have good trainers, where they could, not push you past your limits, but help you functionally. I know that our neighbors here, CrossFit Undefeated, they do a great job of that. They have some good coaches where they have functional programs to help people build that strength to age gracefully. So, that would be a few different avenues. YouTube for the people who want to do it at home themselves. If someone's worried about having some deficiencies and they want to get checked, come on in, we'll do an exam with you. And for someone looking for a gym that might have these types of exercises, check out our neighbors, CrossFit Undefeated.
Yeah. So maybe as a recap, I think everyone should probably start off as looking as to what their goal would look like or should look like when they're in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? And like you mentioned before, the time to start that, to realize that goal is not a year or two before, or it's not that I'm retiring next year and I should start working on things this year. It's what can I do now, 20, 30, 40 years before it happens. And what do I want to do? Travel, pick up my grandkids, move, paddle down the Red River like Erica's doing. What would I want to do? And then start building towards that in terms of proper functional movement, proper flexibility, proper posture, to make sure that we could be doing what we want to do as we age.
Absolutely.
Okay, so hopefully that could help you a little bit in terms of what exercise or how it should look like, especially as you age. And again, if you have any questions, concerns, you can give us a call here at the office, 204-470, no, that's my cell phone, 204-474-1159. Have a great rest of your healthy commute.